guys, as I predicted, Here Lies Love, more like Here Lies a Flop. It's closing in November 26th, my birthday. So not only did Stephen Sondheim die on my birthday, but now one of my favorite new musicals is closing. But I'm seeing it again. But welcome back to Broadway Grosses. We have some interesting things to talk about. Mainly it being Here Lies Love closing, and what I think will be closing next. So let's get into it. & Juliet went from 90% to 92%, and 957K to 997K, which again is another solid week for & Juliet. It's weird how it kind of goes between 1 million and the 900K, but it's not going anywhere anytime soon. It's just very irregular for a show of this magnitude. A Beautiful Noise went from 66% to 62%, and 874K to 793K, which is not the best week, but again, I think with Christmas, Thanksgiving, it will do just fine. I don't think it's gonna be here like in 2 years, but it's gonna be here for a little bit more time. Back to the Future went from 88% to 88%, and $1 million last week and this week, again doing solid numbers. Gutenberg went from 88% to 87%, and 904K to 874K. Again, solid numbers for Gutenberg. And I guess apparently it cost $600,000 a week, I think, is what the operating costs were, or maybe it was the overall budget. But if that's the case, that's crazy. That's crazy. That means that, like, in the preview period, they were not doing good. So, I don't know. Maybe Andrew and Josh have a huge pay cut, but regardless, it's doing well, and it's closing in January, so it could have done terrible, and it wouldn't matter. Hadestown went from 90% to 91%, and 598K to 589K. Again, I think this will close any day now. It's doing terrible. Jordan Fisher coming in, I don't think it's gonna work. If he can't boost ticket sales to like 7s and 8s, maybe 9s, I think he will, they will close it in January, so I don't know if I hope for Hadestown. I really don't see how this show is still surviving. It is doing $500,000. It is doing terrible. Hadestown is in danger of closing. I say that all the time. Hamilton went from 99% to 99%, and $1,767,882 last week to this week's $1,768,000. Harmony went from 519K to 481K, and 77% to 81% this week. Not doing so hot. Personally, I don't think it will make it to the Tonys. It will probably close in March or April. I just think that when a show is starting off with these weak numbers below 600K, it's a bad sign. And it's certainly not doing good at all. Here Lies Love went from 83% to 79%, and 664K to 768K. And again, it is closing, so hopefully it ends on a high note. Kimberly Akimbo went from 84% to 82%, and 599K to 564K. I think this is another musical that will close relatively soon. I think January, but I mean, they would, I would have figured if they were closing in like January, they would have made an announcement already. But again, it is making $500,000, it's bleeding money. When is it gonna close? At this point, it's gonna close, just when? I'm just so surprised that Hadestown and Kimberly Akimbo have been hanging on, and like, where are they getting this money from? So, I'm not sure, but it's coming, guys, it's coming. Merrily We Roll Along continues to make millions, going from 1,840,835 last week to this week's 1,811,423, selling out to 100% capacity, doing amazing. Moulin Rouge went from 94% to 97%, and 1,118,807 last week to this week's 1,230,913. Again, doing really awesome, solid numbers. Shocked, which is closing, went from 78.21 to 78.81, and 643K to 643K, so not a great week for that. 6 went from 789K to 841K, and 87% to 92%, so solid numbers. Some Like It Hot, which is also closing, went from 66% to 65%, and 738K last week to 723K this week. So sad that so many musicals are not doing good and not performing well. Spamalot started out with 89% capacity for 6 performances and 657K, which is pretty good considering that most people thought this was going to flop. I don't think it's selling that well, and I think it will close and not have a very long run because it's not selling very well, but 657K is actually a lot better than a lot of new musicals. Like, it started off better than Kimberly Akimbo or Harmony, so already it's doing better. Again, you would prefer it if it had an 8 or a 9 in front of it, but it isn't the most costly show. to run, so I think it can survive on 7s and maybe 6s, but obviously next week it should go into the 7s and 8s, and if it doesn't, that's a bad sign. And then to cap it off, Sweeney went from 94% to 87%, and that's because Josh Groban was out for a lot of performances, going from 1,583,312 to 1,489,486. And those are the closers for this week. So overall, very sad about Here Lies Love closing. Kimberly Akimbo and Hadestown, you're next. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Like, subscribe, and comment, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.